Hello, I'm Sarah Robinson from Nautilus, and today I have with me maritime historian Dr. Jo Stanley. Welcome, Jo. This month, February 2025, is in the UK LGBT plus History Month. And as an expert on maritime history, including diverse maritime histories, Jo's been doing some work for us on the history of LGBT plus activism in trade unions. Now, we've got an article that Jo's written for us, which is going to be on our website and in the print Telegraph. Jo, tell us a bit about what the article's about, how you went about the research, and what you found.
So the article that's coming up in the Nautilus Journal is talking about, in particular, the most extraordinary, radical maritime trade union in the world. There has never been a maritime union that was as radical as this union. It was called the MCS, the Marine Cooks and Stewards. It was in America, and it was radical because it included Black people, it included LGBT plus people, and it included an awful lot of left wingers. So it really was an extraordinary union that was not like any maritime trade union in any other country in the world at that time. This is the 1930s and 40s.
That's amazing to hear that that's so long ago. What did you find out that they were doing? And did you find some particular names who were very active in LGBT plus activism?
So, in terms of what they did things like protest for better conditions and for rights, and to make sure that people were allowed onto ships no matter what their heritage or background. And there were two heroes, and they are actually known about. So these are the most important gay maritime union activists in the world, not just in the States or in the English speaking world. So these were a guy called Frank McCormack, who was on the executive, and his partner, Mickey Stephen Blair, who was a rank and file activist. So they Frank was working in the 20s onwards. Stephen was working in the 30s onwards, and they became partners, and they lived together for the rest of their lives after they got together in the very early 30s. And they both worked as stewards on ships on and off, and they both really like cross-dressing too. So like lots of gay subculture stories about ships, they did put on their frocks and dance and sing and ignore rules about a seafarer has got to look like some sort of butch toughie. But I particularly found about the MCS and about Frank and Mickey through the work done by an American historian who's now dead called Alan Berube. So he wrote a history of the Union. Well, he was trying to write a whole book when he died, but he's written a chapter about it. He's done lots of talks about it, and he interviewed lots of people, including Mickey. So even when Mickey, our hero, was very old, he was phoning up Alan the historian every week and saying, "You make sure you get our story down, mate." And
Oh,
that happened. So this is a really good example of how activists work in a comradely way with historians and academics. There doesn't have to be the divide that there sometimes is between expert and member.
of course, you are a friend of Nautilus, and we have many times called on your services to provide information that is very hard to get hold of. And one thing that you have done, which perhaps is the thing that you're best known for, is a book called Hello Sailor, which is a history of gay life at sea. Um, that obviously is LGBT plus history, and we are selling the book in our Nautilus bookshop. Jo, can you tell me when you did that book and how you did the research and what came out of it?
Yes, okay. Um, I'll start off by saying that I'm not a traditional academic, that I was a shop steward and did an access course for trade unionists, and then as a mature student got into history and industrial relations and then gender. I was married to an AB, and he told me stories about these these shipmates who wore satin gowns and looked like Hedy Lamarr and Jane Russell by night and were camp as anything, but were respected by tough, really tough seafarers during the day, and were treated as comrades and colleagues. This was a hostile time, and it was still illegal to be homosexual at that time. So my ex-husband's stories absolutely fascinated me. I thought, how can this be? Satin frocks and respect? And then I was interviewing stewardesses, and they kept referring to, as they said, the oddly girlish stewards who wanted to go out shopping with them in foreign ports rather than go to bars and brothels. So I put the two together, and I started to understand that there was an incredible camp subculture on ships from the 1950s, and that continued until the mid 1980s. So I thought somebody needs to write about this, and I thought that somebody needs to be a gay man, ideally a seafarer. So I waited a long, long time, perhaps 20 years. And then when I was doing my PhD on stewardesses, I met somebody called Paul Baker, who was doing a PhD on Polari. Polari is the LGBT language that seafarers and people in theatre spoke. And I just happened to say to him, "What are you doing, Paul?" And he said, "Oh, I'm doing Polari. I suppose you don't know what that is." And I said, "Oh, yes, I do." And we decided to collaborate on a couple of papers, and I took those papers and presented them in Australia. And as a result of chats with colleagues at this maritime conference in Fremantle, um, I realized that there was a book and an exhibition in this. So I started putting out feelers. Paul and I wrote the book together, which was great fun. He was really good to collaborate with. That came out in 2003. And then the exhibition started in Liverpool at the Maritime Museum there in 2005, and it was designed to tour. So it went to a number of other places, to Newcastle, Southampton, Glasgow, and Halifax, Nova Scotia eventually. And I think what was special about this exhibition was that there had never been an exhibition about LGBT seafarers before. So museums in lots of other countries sent a team of staff over to study what we'd done to see if it was a good model or if it was a terrible anti-model. So as a result of this exhibition happening, it was like snowball effect. A lot of museums started thinking about, how do we represent this history too, whether it's an exhibition or just some events. Also, we decided to make it light so that it was accessible to family audiences. And that worked really well. In some cases, parents did actually bring their kids to the exhibition to give them a sort of early education in LGBT life or in diversity, really. So it had an educational use beyond the maritime world. Though I have to say that in the maritime world, lots of LGBTX seafarers loved it. And in Southampton, I heard them referring to our exhibition as the reunion.
Oh, is there a chance that it might come back in the Hello Sailor exhibition?
Um, well, Hello Sailor was on in 2005, really until 2017 at the Merseyside Maritime Museum when it wasn't touring. So it's really had a long, long life, and museums don't normally give exhibitions, temporary exhibitions, that long a life. So lots of elements of it have been incorporated into the permanent exhibition, and there is a video of it too, which you can see online. Although the exhibition is over and the book's published, but keeps being republished, I still talk to a lot of LGBT plus seafarers, including modern seafarers today. And I'm particularly interested in the psychology of being somebody LGBT in this peculiar situation on the ship. So I would be delighted if anybody wanted to get in touch with me talking about their seafaring experiences as an LGBT person. In particular, we need a lot more stories by women because they are really not well represented.